Big week ahead. It's time to talk about the Belmont. Very lucky to have two of my best buds in the world of horse racing, Matt DeSantis, Barry Spears, the sniper, and we're going to talk all about the Saturday card at Belmont Park. We're going to dive into all the graded stakes races. It's basically a card's worth of graded stakes races because there's 9 of them on Saturday. We're actually recording this on Wednesday evening, though, so something to keep in mind, there's been really bad fires in Canada. And that has blown a lot of smoke down into New York on Wednesday night, right around the time we are recording. The Yankees actually canceled their game, their baseball game, and they've already canceled a couple different tracks running for Thursday. I know Woodbine canceled Thursday. They've canceled morning training at Belmont Park for Thursday also. So just something to keep in mind for the next few days with the weather, how all of that will impact the races, because Maddie, we were set up for Thursday 2 stakes races, Friday 5 graded stakes races, Saturday 9 graded stakes with the Belmont the feature.
Yeah, it's a loaded weekend, and obviously we're just hoping the health of everybody up there in the Northeast. And I'm in Northern Virginia, and I even walked out at my place this morning and smelled the smoke and saw the haze up here in Northern Virginia, and know it's a lot worse up in the tri-state area up in New York. But the word is, if you're looking at the forecast, it does look like it's going to start moving out tomorrow, Thursday afternoon. And so fingers crossed, Friday and Saturday should be good racing. We'll see. Maybe Thursday has to get canceled and rescheduled, but it looks like Friday and Saturday, like I said, knock on wood and fingers crossed, it's going to be okay.
Seems like Thursday to me probably would be the day that's on the chopping block.
Yeah. If you're going to make a cut, that might be the day where you say, right, we do it now. We could move a couple of stakes from that day if we needed to
another Thursday or another Friday. They'll be able to recover from that. I don't think they'll be able to recover if they were to postpone the Belmont Stakes. That's tough.
Yeah,
tough to do for a lot of reasons. Just the timing of the race itself was on a specific day. Moving that day changes plans. And it'd be hard to know if people would actually still stay in the race given if it was moved. But hopefully it's just talking, that's not going to happen.
So just something we had to mention, at least at the very top of the broadcast here, as we get ready to dive into the daily racing form past performances. Oh yeah, those PPs are now available for DRF right now. Everything you need at drf.com. And we always like to go into the formulator past performances. If you've ever hung out with us, myself and Matt and Barry are always together on Friday morning for a show called This Weekend in Stable Duel. We give out our best bets for Friday and for Saturday, and then we talk all about Stable Duel, which is a daily horse racing contest. It's an app you can download. They have games every single day, all sorts of different contests. So we'll give out our best bets for horses that are running in those contests, whichever tracks that they have. This weekend, they don't have any contest for the New York tracks, so I had to make sure my guys didn't get any week off. No way. I got to make sure that I'm making sure and take advantage of them to talk about the Belmont. So let's pull up the past performances from DRF right now. And as we do, Maddie, we're going to talk about race number 3, which is the first stakes race on the card. It is the graded stakes race, the one that's going to be featuring one of the shorter, the True North, which will feature a short price. We'll also have one more later in the day, I think, where we'll have a really, really short price. But let's start with the True North in here. Elite Power, your Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, who's also the winner of the sprint, the Group 2 sprint. I guess it's a Group 3 sprint in Saudi Arabia. We have not seen him since February the 25th. He was rerouted. They initially were planning on going to the Met Mile, but they said now they're going to go here, maybe a softer spot to start the year.
Yeah, a softer spot potentially to start the year. And obviously coming back from running it overseas. I'll be honest, though, I don't think this horse is that much. I don't think this horse is a 4 to 5 type of a favorite, even though that's what the morning line is. When you look at the
he sure doesn't overwhelm just on speed figures right off the bat, right? Just at first glance.
Yeah, he and Strobe are not all that far apart. They're right next door to each other in the 4 and 5 hole. Strobe's been running some nice races at Oaklawn, and there's not a huge buyer speed figure edge in this field. And when you look at the interesting thing is what I like to also do, and this is one of the reasons we love DRF and the formulator, is seeing those Timeform US early and late pace numbers. And when you see those sprints, you typically see these kind of eye-popping early speed numbers. And when you look at a horse like Elite Power, he really looks more like a plotter, kind of the same type of speed early as he has late. Now, obviously, he's been on a heck of a roll. Bill Mott has been, moving him in a really, smart way and putting him in very smart positions to win. But the horse that kind of intrigued me was the horse on the rail. I'll be honest. The number 1 horse, Today's Flavor, just because this horse is the speed of the speed.
Yep.
This horse has by far and away the strongest early pace numbers in the field. And from the rail with Manny Franco aboard, I know what that means. All systems go and go fast. And so they are going to get out there and might just not get as much pressure as you think on the front end because they're going to be, trying to get out there. And this is a horse that has been getting better and better. And I like what I see from this horse. And again, if you're going to try to beat Elite Power at 4 to 5, I would prefer not to use a horse like Strobe at 2 to 1. I'd rather use a horse like this at 5 to 1, get a little bit more value.
His race against Open Company 2 starts back in the Carter. He's behind Repo Rocks and Doppelganger. That wasn't a bad effort. He was only beaten a length and a half that day. And like you said, he's the horse who's going to dictate things from the inside because he's no doubt the fastest in here, the one to catch and beat. Barry, how are you looking at this race? How are you approaching it?
See, I'm looking at this slightly differently because I think Strobe is probably the best horse in this race. He just had some problems. The layoff lines indicate that he had some problems early in the year. And what I do like is that he came back running at Oaklawn. He didn't win that day. Got beat by Skelly. That was a
strong race, though.
But Skelly came back to win, I think, twice.
Yeah, this is a horse who's won, 5 in a row now. And then other horses from that race. Tejano Twist came back and ran 3rd in the Grade 1 Churchill Downs, and then again in the Aristides. We had Cogburn come back to win next start in a $100,000 stakes at Lone Star, and then Candyman Rocket, who came back to win the Grade 3 Run Happy, who just looked overmatched in that race. It was a tough group. So that was a good race, Barry. Yeah. I really agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong in all of his starts. In 6 starts, he has done nothing wrong. And I think this is going to actually play into his favor, even though Today's Flavor looks like the speed of the speed. I think Strobe is probably just as quick and will be glued
sitting
to
outside
that horse. Yes.
Sitting just off.
And that's what I want to see. But on paper, it looks like either Elite Power or Strobe. I mean, I would love to give a horse like Today's Flavor a chance, but I think he's just overmatched here.
The one who was strange, I think, when we all saw this horse pop up in the entries was Fearless. Who's just been like a real distance horse. He's just always seemed like a horse who's wanted to go longer, and now they're going to cut him all the way back from 1.5 miles. His last 3 races, 1.5 miles, 1.75 miles, 1.5 miles, and he's back here going 6.5. I'm not sure if I can, I want to get to the 3 a little bit. I want to try to, and mainly because I look at his recent form and he's run second a bunch, but you start diving into who he's faced recently. So on February the 11th, he was behind Spirit of McKenna. This is a very nice horse here out on the West Coast, who has won 3 in a row and won back-to-back graded stakes races, is like the top sprinter out West right now. Anarchist then ran into a horse named Motorious. We actually saw Motorious come back and run a bang-up race on the undercard at Churchill Downs, finishing second in the turf sprint, earning 101 buyer speed figure that day. And the only reason Motorious didn't win is because nobody passed No Bulls that day. Just ended up going wire to wire from the inside. So another good race. And then Brickyard Ride, who you see that Anarchist faced a couple times. Brickyard Ride is a multiple graded stakes winner, and he's just really fast and tough to run down. The main concern for me is 6.5. At 6, I would I would really give Anarchist a shot. I don't know, because I think he could sit a pretty nice trip. He might be able to sit my third.
That was my, kind of question mark here is what running style is he?
Because
Does
if
he
he can
want the
sit
lead? Does he?
third
That,
behind,
yeah.
like Strobe goes and puts a little pressure on the one, and he's right behind them and gets a jump, I could see that. But I don't know at 6.5 if that'll translate. But I like him as a horse overall. It's just I don't know if this is the right spot for him. I was just kind of talking myself into him here in the True North. But Elite Power 4-5 on the morning line, definitely the horse to beat, but not overwhelming. And they keep him out of a lot of the exotics, like he is going to be an overwhelming favorite in here. So that's the first of the 9 graded stakes races for Saturday. Let's move along to race number 5, which is the next. It's the grade 3 poker, a mile on the turf here for 4-year-olds and up. And Chez Pierre, even money on the morning line. This horse has won 6 of 7 starts. Barry, he won one at Tampa, and then his only race that he didn't really fire was in the Tampa Bay. And if you just eliminate that, he hasn't done anything else wrong. Seems a little quirky. Like his race last time out, he was kind of sitting and then he kind of moved early and went to it.
He
But
kind of got gifted that win.
yeah, because so I'm not exactly sure what to think. It was sort of a strange race, but what do we do with the one in here who's the heavy favorite on the morning line?
I'm leaning towards fading that horse. I don't like his post position, and I think he kind of got I guess you could say a little bit lucky in his last race to kind of just to get that lead at the time that he got it. And then, there was really nobody there. I mean, Modern Games was coming from way back and he ran on pretty well, but it was too late at that point. And I think it was kind of a fortunate kind of win. But I think Emmanuel here is going to be tough.
Yeah,
I think
I figured that. I know you've been a fan, and I figured you.
Yeah, he's sitting on a huge race. And this spot kind of fits the bill. I mean, it just all depends on what the 7 Filo di Ariana is going to do, because that horse is pretty much a sprinter. And if that horse kind of gets out in front, and I don't think Chez Pierre really wants to be up front.
No,
close to the lead.
That could be the trick, right? If she gets caught up in a battle, if he gets caught up in a battle with this one, and they put a little too much pressure on each other, and I think from the inside, I could see that happening. And can we get? And I agree with you. Can we get Emmanuel to just track in right behind them?
Right. That's what I want to see. Just a nice tracking trip right behind the leaders. I rode this horse last time. I didn't think he got the best of trips. He was out wide at Pimlico in the dinner
and he just
party.
Looked like he was a winner at the mile.
Yep.
And it just that mile and an eighth seemed like it was a little too far for him. He just sort of, it wasn't like he completely stopped either. He just, his energy just
He just
dulled down at the mile
a lot. Instead of speeding up. Now, the cutback, I mean, everything looks to be in this horse's favor. He just got to get it done, and hopefully he's not too short of a price.
Maddie, Chez Pierre will take a lot of money. Another interesting one might be the Deuce, who fits, and he was getting really good last year, but then he hasn't raced since September. The only thing is, when you dive into this particular horse, he has fired fresh repeatedly. Over and over. When you look at, he was off from October of 2017 to April of 2018. First start back, crushes, wins by 6. First start in North America off of more than a year layoff, wins. Like, he's won off of layoffs multiple times over and over. So, and the connections are definitely capable of firing fresh.
Absolutely. No, it's funny. That was the one note I made was has run well off the bench before. And, that's something you tend to look for with horses that do have multiple lines in their past performances. How have they come back, historically speaking? Because rather than relying on trainer stats, I'd much rather rely on the horse. And so this is one who, you're right, always seems to bring a good effort off the bench. And as horses get a little bit older, I also, horses tend to actually do their best running sometimes first time out. We tend to see that. So, an 8-year-old doing that makes a lot of sense, that you'd actually get a really good effort first time off the bench, and should sit that I think a useful trip and can be versatile. I mean, we've seen him sit pretty close to the speed and can sit a little further back. 2-for-7 winning at the distance, 4-for-7 in the money. I will say, I like Barry. I also like Emmanuel quite a bit in this spot. I think this is
this would have been an
yeah, this would have been one of those. Yeah,
yeah.
We both like Emmanuel here. I mean, Shea Paris, I just think, honestly, I think what happened to that Maker's Mark mile, and I was talking with David Aragona about this, is up to the mark, I think just kind of fell asleep at the wheel a little bit and was not nearly as forwardly placed as he probably should have been in that race, and let Shea Paris end up getting this really, very easy lead. I just don't see this happening again. And I think Emmanuel, I've been waiting on him for this trip for a while.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to hit one of these days because it's a talented horse. And I think and the other interesting thing about going to Belmont, and maybe this is kind of an interesting dynamic, even with the 7 as well, who's run up at Woodbine, is this is basically a glorified 1-turn mile. And a lot of these horses don't do that on turf. And so the horses that are used to running one-turn turf races are sprinters or horses that have run up at Woodbine because they have that unusual track configuration where the turf is outside of the synthetic. So you do 1-turn mile races on the turf up there. So I actually think Emmanuel sets up beautifully as a 1-turn turf horse in this sort of a spot. So I really like this one at 9-2 in the morning line. You're getting a little bit of value. I think you can try to get past the overwhelming favorite here.
Yeah, key to the race is the 7. What does he do out there? Because he is very fast. Miles pushing it for him. I mean, he can get it under the right circumstances, but if he gets any other pressure, he'll fade. But he's a nice horse. He's a 7-year-old now who finished second behind Rockcrest, and then Rockcrest came back to win just last week. And this race has already produced a couple next out winners. Rockcrest actually won the Pink Lloyd. Frank that form a little bit. Let's look at race number 5, the second graded stakes race among 9 on Saturday as we move to the Brooklyn. Race number 6. And initially, I wasn't sure what to do with this race. I started warming up a little bit more with the 2, but it's to the 2 red run. But these are always difficult races just for me personally as a handicapper, the way I handicap, watching races, using as much information as possible to make like an educated decision. We just don't have nearly as much information with horses going long because there are not a lot of races going long, whether it be mainly on the dirt. Like we have less of them on the dirt than we do on the turf, but just overall we don't. So they're always more difficult for me to get a feel for everyone because I just don't feel like I know these horses as well. And in this race, you get some of the familiar faces going long. You're going to see Next, who's been in a lot of these races recently. You're going to see Lone Rock, and who's been in a lot of these races the last few years, is a 16-time winner. May have lost a bit of a step now at 8. And then Warrant, who might be sort of the now horse, Barry, in this division, sort of been figuring it out and been a horse who can sit close moving forward. Do you have a strong opinion or any type of opinion in this race, the Grade 2 Brooklyn?
It's a tough race, because like you said, it's something that we don't see a lot of in this country, is a lot of long distance races on the dirt. That being said, I think we have seen enough of Red Run to understand that this horse is going to run well.
Yeah.
You see this horse get claimed 3 starts back in Oaklawn by Mike Maker, who does this an awful lot, steps horses up and starts winning. And lo and behold,
doesn't he just feel like he's got more upside than like we know the rest of this group? We sort of know what their ceiling might be and who they are.
And the biggest indicator was his last race against Warrant, who I have personally seen enough of. I just don't think it's at 5-2 or a short price here. He's a good play.
In this race, Matt, too, I feel like for this type of a race, there's a good amount of early pace signed on, or horses who you feel like should at least be forwardly placed in here, stretching out. A horse like Bright Future. This is like the testing race for the connections, right? To get a chance for their rider to go 1.5 miles on the main track before the Belmont, just to get a little feel for it. Bright Future, I'd imagine, will be forwardly placed. You're going to see
I think Alfio is going to be pretty forward.
Alfio's going to be close up.
Yeah.
Next wants to be close up.
Yeah.
Lone Rock and Warrant both don't
Yeah.
want to be too far out of it ever. I'd imagine Centavo doesn't want to be too far out of it. So for a mile and a half race,
Yeah,
there could be 3-4 horses all wanting to push the pace. And then you have a couple others that just by default are more forwardly placed. We see it every year in the Belmont.
Right.
You get a few horses where people are like, whoa, what are they doing so close? Well, they're just running a little bit farther at a little bit slower type pace. And I think it could set up really well for Red Run. How do you see this race shaping up, or what are some of your thoughts here, Matty?
Yeah, so Red Run was my number 2 choice. I like this horse a lot. Obviously, we should say a full sibling to Red Route 1, who is, of course, running in the Belmont Stakes later in the card. So from a pedigree standpoint, obviously a horse, we've been talking about how Red Route 1 wants more and more distance. Then this is presumably the sibling will too. And that's certainly what we saw last time out. Huge perk up in buyer speed figures, now going up 1.5 miles for the first time. So I think there's a lot to like with Red Run. You're getting much better value. I will say, I do think Next, I like Barry. I've seen enough of Warrant. I think Next is a little bit more intriguing than Warrant, just because you go, well, second back from a really long layoff. It's only logical that the horse kind of wore out a little bit on the front end in that first race back. It certainly has the ability. And the thing is, what's so interesting about Next is, even though, going into his 17th career race, he's still really new in this division. He really only
what's funny,
came
not
into
to interrupt,
3 races ago. Yeah.
Look at his form and compare it to Red Run. He's like a year ahead.
Yeah.
It almost looks identical. Like a lot of the same sort of races, right? They were in these stakes races when they were young, just kind of trying to figure out where they were, claimed, and then moved up into and now sort of placed in a division as a type, right?
Yep.
And that's what happens a lot of times with like distance horses and turf sprinters, because very rarely do people say like, I just bred myself a turf sprinter, right? It's usually not like, but nobody wants to win graded stakes races on the grass, right? I mean, anyone wants to win good races. It doesn't matter what. You just sort of have to figure out where you belong. I think it's the same with these distance horses sometimes.
I totally agree. And sometimes they fall into this later in their careers, and it does feel like both the 2 and the 5 just kind of figured out what they're good at recently. And so the fact that they're still relatively new in this division, I'm going to use them. I like the 5 up top, but we'll probably use the 2. And this is one also to pay attention to the tote board, I think, at as well, just to see where the money is going in this race, and see if a 5 starts taking money, then I'm probably a little bit more interested in using the 2. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot more pace in this race than you would expect. Mm-hmm. And there's it's interesting. There's a Friday race on the turf that's 2 miles that also has a little bit more pace than you would expect. So some of these like marathon races, they're going to be going a little faster up front. So look for those closers, and certainly the 2 makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, this is like a race that's an automatic play against the favorite, whoever it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's continue along to race number 7. Up next, it is the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps, 1.16 miles, fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. Really good group that showed up for this one. You have probably the 3 or 4 top of the division right now, with Clairiere starting on the outside. The concern with Clairiere, though, always, I know we're all big fans of her, is that she has a late running style, and that could compromise her quite often. Like, she'll always show up with a good late run, but if she's in races where she doesn't quite get the trip, the horses who do get a better trip than her can beat her. We've seen it throughout her career. Now, in this particular race, in this small field, Matt, I think that's what may come into play, right, in a race like this, because looking at the field, it seems like you've got the one main for sure speed horse, I think, with Played Hard. Yeah. And then I could see search results making Played Hard work a little bit difficult. And then the one is kind of the wild card I was looking at.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at this race. And so, Clairiere is, we all love her, but good Lord, she's going to make me lose my hair at some point, because that running style, I mean, good Lord, she just barely gets up there when she does.
And when like about halfway through the race, sometimes it's like her running style gets very lazy. Yes. And sometimes you're like, she's got no shot. Like you're just like, she's checked out, and then she'll still win and she'll like flip into it. But whew, it gets nervous.
It gets very nervous, and perhaps it's fitting that Joelle is riding her.
Yep.
But it is. Yeah, I will say, if we remember, go back to last year's Ogden Phipps, that was one of the more amazing races I remember from 2022, because that was the one where Latruska and Search Results are running what looks like a Breeders' Cup sprint race out in the front end and opened up 15 lengths on the rest of the field, only to see Malathaat and Clairiere come closing like freight trains and Clairiere get there.
And like Search Results held on so awesome.
Well,
and so unbelievable that day.
And that's the reason I really like Search Results. And I still have that race in my head of like,
it feels like it's her spot.
This is her spot. Second back from a layoff. And she's not going to have to deal with nearly the same sort of speed duel that she dealt with Latruska last year. And we know she can sustain very fast pace and keep going. I really like Search Results here. I think this is the one she finally gets. I feel like they've been trading races between, last year Malathaat and Clairiere, this year Clairiere and Secret Oath, and even Played Hard. And I feel like Search Results, this is her turn to kind of get the win.
And Barry, we were talking about another race, a horse who's fired fresh repeatedly. Search Results is kind of the opposite. If you've noticed, she's not been as good in her first start back. So that's when she has a big effort almost all the time. So this is the race that you see, that you think she ran kind of deceivingly well too. She was in a good spot, and then she was behind horses. Then she moved down to the inside, and she was moving well. I think she was just a little bit short there. How do you see this one unfolding, Barry?
Well, I am under the impression that Past This Champagne is going to heckle, menace, what have you, Played Hard. That happens, it falls right into Search Results lap.
Perfect.
There's not much speed in here.
Yep.
So the pace isn't going to be wild like it was when she got beat. And I think Search Results just falls into the perfect trip. Even if, let's just say, Past the Champagne doesn't hassle
She can just sit second right off.
Right off, and I think she's just a better horse. She
a little classier, a little fitter.
She just wasn't better off the bench, and that's what got her beat. So this time is the time for Search Results. I like this one.
I'm actually going to include, like, if you're playing multis, I'm going to include both of those two. Just I think a lot of people might just dismiss the 5, and this horse might float up a little bit more. And if this horse gets the right kind of trip, she can absolutely win this race if she gets left alone out front, and if they're just backing off a length or two on her. I think she's got some quality, so I'm going to make sure I include her too. But I completely agree with you guys. I played Search Results a little bit in the La Troyenne, and then afterwards I was mad at myself for doing it, because I knew that I wanted to play her in the second start back, but I thought, you know what? She's classy. She still might get a good trip, because she is. She's really classy. She's really honest. And Matt, you kind of mapped it out perfectly. That race last year, it stands out so much how well she ran almost the same race, like 2 different times, and got beat. And it was really unlucky. And you're just watching her like, oh my God. It was the Phipps, and then in the personal ensign. It's almost the same thing happened again, where she put all the pressure on Latruska, puts her away. Latruska's done, and she just can't hold off the closer. So,
and this is as competitive a division as we have in horse racing night right now in terms of the distaff division. And like I said, they take turns kind of beating each other. And I don't think any one of them is dominant necessarily, whether it be Secret Oath or Clairiere or Search Results or, Played Hard. But I think they are all, to Barry's point, on a given day, if they get the right setup, they can absolutely capitalize on that. And I feel like this is the day for Search Results.
Oh, and don't forget, as you're talking about this division, Nest has just posted the 4th consecutive work now. And I'm very much paying attention, because I drafted Nest in a fantasy horse racing league. And so I've been waiting all year for some races. Now I got Nest. I had Forte get scratched out of the Derby, the morning line favorite. Come on, I need some luck in this league as we move along to race number 8. It's the Woody Stevens. The 3-year-old sprint races at this time of year are always some of my favorite to handicap.
Fantastic.
They're just so great because as we watch all these horses develop and go longer and try to get their Kentucky Derby points, we always have in the back of our mind that some of them aren't going to be able to go that far, right? And we're waiting for some of these horses to cut back to the mile on the Pat Day Mile, or to cut back to 7 furlongs here in some of these spots. So whether or not we're right, I feel like every year I always have like 1 or 2 horses that I'm like, yes, they showed up where I wanted them. I'm excited. Maybe they're good enough. Maybe they're not. And for me, there was another one this year that I've been waiting for. And again, it could be a tough spot. And I don't know if he's quite as good as a few others, but this is the spot I want for Victory Formation.
I knew you were going to go there. Yep, I agree.
Just really thought that. I mean, this is a horse who was favored in the Risen Star. He was favored over Angel of Empire and 2 Phils, and they both came out of that race to win next out. It was just a little too far for him. Honestly, if you look at the race, he's traveling pretty well most of the race. They just tried to sit off a little bit. He just had nothing when they asked him to go because it was a little too far. I think in this situation now, he just went 1 mile and 1/8 last time out. I think he'll be fine sitting just off from out wide in here. I think he will be complete. I'd much rather have him out here than draw the rail.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Something like that. Because then that really forces him. Right. And Matt, we've talked about him a few times. I've been sort of waiting for him to show up in spots. We mentioned how, isn't it funny how just different preps could change the Triple Crown Trail? Because if he would have showed up in 1 or 2 of those races where there's no speed, and he just goes wire to wire, and he gets the points, and then he's in the Derby. And I'm not saying he's a Derby winner or everything, but things definitely change because of that. I remember we pointed out 1 or 2 of those races that were like, hey, this horse would actually be really tough in here.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, if he had just stayed down in the fairgrounds and run in the Louisiana Derby where there was almost no speed at all, and Kingsbarn kind of walked the dog up front and ended up winning that one. I mean, Victory Formation has much better early speed than you know, Kingsbarn's does, and could have held on potentially there. And then you're looking at a different trajectory. It's interesting. Cox, after that Risen Star, in an interview, even said Victory Formation might be a Pat Day Mile type of horse. That's what was so interesting, was that then he goes to the Bathhouse Row Stakes. And I go, okay, they're going to keep trying to route this horse. That's kind of interesting. But now they end up in the Woody Stevens, which is maybe where this horse should have been all along. And so I agree. This horse makes a lot of sense. And there's a ton of speed to the inside, in this race. And so I like that this horse is the outside and can kind of slot in. Giroux can kind of figure out where this horse can slot in and is not necessarily getting the hand forced, but can sit a little bit and can rate perhaps a little behind some of the real speed balls that are in this race that are stretching out in some instances, like a New York Thunder or something like that. So, I think this one sets up well. I will say I also, I do like the number 8 Fort Bragg for Baffert. I mean, this is a horse that just
him
feels
and Jim
very
both
logical.
ran a great race, right? And if it sets up for someone off the pace, both of them again. Barry loved Fort Bragg, and he ran too good to lose. That was a wicked beat for the sniper. But again, sits that same sort of trip, right? No knocks on him.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because I was super high on General Jim in that Pat Day Mile. Sniper was on Fort Bragg. Well, now I'm on Fort Bragg now. I mean, I actually am a little less enthralled with General Jim in this spot because I actually think he might need a little more ground to get going from the back. And Fort Bragg can sit, I think, a little bit more of a useful trip behind some of the early speed. So I like this one a lot. But if you're playing this horizontally, I mean, you could go 5-6 wide if you wanted to. I mean, because we haven't even touched on a horse like Drew's Gold on the far outside, who's a perfect 4-for-4 and hasn't done anything wrong.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. You know why, Gino? You see his past performances. Started out running. You know, as a 2-year-old. Won first time out in a restricted race at Churchill, then went to Laurel, wins. Optional, basically just rising up the ranks. Had some time off after February, came back May 12th, ran a bang-up race, just a much improved race on the 12th, and now gets into this spot. I like the draw. I like the post position. I think this one's going to be tough. And the other horse is another one that I like because I actually like 3 horses in this race. The
funny,
first one in
yeah.
order, it was Drew's Gold. Then it was Federal Judge, who I think is a runner.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, if that horse can kind of navigate between and around General Jim and Fort Bragg, he's going to be really tough. And then Victory Formation. The only reason I didn't like him higher up is because of the cutback. I don't really like that 1.8 to 7 cutback. Usually they need another race, so they'll go 7, and then the second time at 7, it'll
They'll be
probably be
back to
better.
the sprinting.
Right.
But yeah, what's for me in playing this in late exotics, I will definitely include the Jim and Fort Bragg just because I'm going to need 1 or 2 horses that can close just in case, because there are crazy prospects that this could be
both of them.
just wicked. So I
Don't
think
want
I'm
either
using
one.
the in my exotics, the 2 that the Victory Formation and Drew, probably Bragg. You know, I'll probably be like those 3 or 4 Bragg, and then a little less with Jim, but I'm going to want 1 or 2 because, man, there are versions of this race where 10 of them are lining up and going really, really fast, and whoever can kind of sit and get the trip may capitalize. Love it.
One of the things I'll say is one of the horses we didn't talk about, which I think is because we're all fading, is Arabian Lion, who's actually like the second choice on the board from a morning line standpoint. But the problem is there's so much speed in this race, and this horse does not run well when it doesn't get on the lead. And there's no way this horse is getting the lead in this race. And so this was just like one of the easier tosses of a favorite that I had, I think, on the whole card, where I was like,
he beats me,
forget this.
He can beat me. I was never even that high on him early on.
Either. I like the other Arabian Night.
I like this one better.
Okay, you're a fan of the Lion more.
Yeah. I think that if this horse is going to win, he's just going to pop the gate and just keep drill everybody. Nobody's going to be close to him. That's the only way he can win.
Right.
It's the only way he can win, and obviously I think that the chances of that happening are not good.
Arabian Lion, one that we're discussing here in race number 8 on the Belmont Saturday card. We keep moving along. Race 9 kicks off the pick 4 that will end in the Belmont, and you have 4 consecutive graded stakes races, and all 4 of them are grade 1. So it's a grade 1 pick 4 there, starting in the 9th with the Jaipur. And Barry, this one is another race where they could be flying early on. Caravel was a horse who was funny. She was 40-1 in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint against the boys. And following that, she's just been a monster. She's won 4 straight. She beat the boys again to start the year. She crushed the girls last time out. But she is better at 5 and 5.5 than 6. Is that something that concerns you? Do you sort of start with Caravel? How do you see this race?
Look, man, that Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, she lucked into that win. And I felt like the ones after that she lucked into also, even though she was very, very short price. And I just have to fade this horse every single time. She's bet way too much and very vulnerable on a lot of occasions, this being one of them. I don't want any part of her in here from that post. There's a lot of good horses in here, especially the longer trip, from 5.5 to 6.
And
it's
this Belmont 6 is even different, right? It even plays, I think, more like a 6.5 or maybe even a little longer.
Right, because everybody, the thing about Belmont is the turns are so wide and sweeping that it gives everybody a chance. You really don't lose too much ground if you have to go outside, especially on the turf course. There's just way too much speed in here. I don't
think like nothing better.
Right.
Fly. Like that horse can fly and make it really difficult for her.
Yeah. And you even got horses like Midday Image who likes to go to the lead. Now that he's in the Jacobson barn, he cut back into sprints, which is bizarre, but whatever. And that left me with 2 horses here. Go Bears Go and Dr. Zemph.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to really lean towards Dr. Zemph because I think that horse is just going to fall into a great trip here.
Let's watch the race on March the 10th at Gulfstream, because that's the race that we'd love to see, that type of a trip that he sat this day. So he's the number 2. And keep in mind, this was his first start since August, and this was on March the 10th. And this was his first start in North America, first start for the new barn. And Barry, I'm with you and with both of them as horses to use in late exotics. But in particular, I made Dr. Zemp my top selection because we're getting the cutback. He showed a little speed going longer. He was in that weird race where he was on the lead and he took up, and we sort of let and Shea Pierre, Paris. I kept calling him Pierre, huh? Matty, right?
Hey, I'm the same way.
Thank you. Okay. So I think this is a good spot for Zemp. So he's sitting 5th inside. That's the type of trip we'd love to see with him in here, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we want to see on Saturday. This trip, the same trip. If he gets the same trip, he's going to be very, very tough. And if this horse and search results win, you're going to have a great day.
It's going to be a very nice day for you.
I promise you that.
You'll hear Barry from Florida. I mean, in that case,
you might. You might.
What I like too is that in this race, he showed a couple things. He can sit behind horses. He has no problem with a little bit of traffic too, Matt, because this is what could happen in a turf sprint, right?
Yep.
It's not always a linear trip for you. Sometimes you're behind, you're waiting, you got to shift out, you got to move through traffic. He seemed like that's something he could do in a spot like this.
Absolutely. No, very useful horse. And listen, anybody coming out of the Chad Brown barn, you got to take seriously on a day like this up at the Belmont turf. So makes a lot of sense. If he gets that type of trip, I think he's very tough. I like Barry's other one, Go Bears Go, quite a bit. Yeah. This is a horse I've always really liked, going back all the way to his 2-year-old year in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint when he came over and ran second behind Twilight Gleaming. This horse just fell off form for a little bit over in Europe, came back into Wesley Ward's barn,
but off of form is in the races against the best, like
the absolute
top
best.
Group 1s. And I think, just like we were saying, the opposite of Caravel,
he's
better
going
at
to
6.
benefit to the 6 furlongs.
He'll absolutely benefit.
Definitely going to be better for him.
Absolutely. And so I think this is, second back from a really long layoff. Ward turf sprinters always are gold. Jose, quite frankly, on the turf at Belmont is like a totally different creature. And he's riding very, very well. This meet obviously up at Belmont. So I really like Go Bears Go. And then listen, I got to give a shout out to our guy Casa Creed as well.
You got to mention him.
I mean,
the short, if it's him and like Caravel that are the
I'll take
prices,
him
because
every time.
And what's nice about him, I've mentioned this before, when you come off of layoffs as consistently as he does, with you have his running style, he only has to run for a quarter mile.
Yeah,
he sits back, he just pushes the button and they launch the rally. And if it sets up for him, he goes, but he doesn't have to really carve it out all throughout and have a bunch breathing down his back while he's setting the fractions, So
right.
Yeah. I don't want to get beat like by him in some exotics and races. Like if I have my others hit, he'll be on some of my tickets.
Yeah, I just think and like you said, we've seen him fire off the bench. We've seen him do this exact same thing before where he comes back from overseas and wins the Jaipur, just like he did last year.
2-time Jaipur winner.
Exactly. And so, he doesn't run bad races either. That's the other thing. And I just feel like Caravel, if you're giving me a choice between the 2 shorter priced horses, I'm taking Casa Creed every day because I think the 9 absolutely burns up Caravel. Or just gets the lead outright, and then Caravel doesn't get the sort of trip that she wants in this particular race. And so I'm all the way out on her. And so I'll be using Casa Creed. I'll be using Go Bears Go. I might be using a little bit of the number 3 horse as well, Air Force Red, who I think is kind of an interesting horse as well. 12
at least as a flyer on a pick 4 or 2 or an under. I think this trip will be good for him cutting back a little bit from a fitness standpoint. His races all going 6 and 6.5 in a mile recently. Now he cuts back. He'll be forwardly placed, but he can also pass horses a little bit.
Yeah.
A couple starts back. I mean, he was 7-2 in the grade 1 Kilrow. 2 starts back. Like he was a player in there. In the Thunder Road, he won the grade 2 Hernandez, then he stretched out and he just missed in the Thunder Road that day. And I think you guys liked De Jour that day too, who ran really well behind Earl's Rock. He wouldn't shock me either to see him run well in here. But yeah, we're all sort of cold on Caravel. Zemp as a major player.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly sure what to do with the rest of me red. He's had a couple trouble trips here and there, but
I can't with this horse.
I wanted a little
how many
more from
times
him.
am I going to bet this horse? I mean,
know.
I can't. If he beats me, he beats me. But I mean, there have been so many races where I'm like, oh, it's going to be a Rest Me Reds day. I can just see it, and then
I kind of feel
happens.
the same way with him. I've included him, I think, a few times in a row, and now I'm sure when we don't, he'll snap us. He'll get us.
107.
One horse, one long shot shout out to Front Run the Fed.
There was your boy. I was gonna say we had to mention him.
He didn't almost beat Casa Creed back in 2021 at Belmont at 7 furlongs. If this was a 7 furlong race, he'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be pretty good at a big price for maybe 3rd or 4th.
Front Run the Fed. Barry dished him out, and he paid like $28 on April the 22nd at Keeneland that day. So look at the Jaipur, really fun race to handicap. And that's what's good about this card is that there's a lot of races with some heavy favorites, some big name horses, and there are going to be a few of them that you got to just fade along the way. You just got to pick and choose which ones you want to do. We've already picked out a few for you that we feel like we're going to take swings against as we move into the final pick 3 that leads right into the Belmont. 3 big races, the Grade 1 Met Mile, the Grade 1 Manhattan, and the Grade 1 Belmont. So let's talk about the Met Mile. And Barry, let's talk about Cody's Wish to start. He is the morning line favorite in the Met Mile, and he will be facing the likes of White Abario, Epo Rocks, Zandon, Charge It, some of the major players down towards the inside. Slow Down Andy and Dr. Chevelle should be flashing some speed and be forwardly placed in here. How do you see this one shaping up?
Yeah, obviously the race goes through Cody's Wish. But I don't particularly think that this horse is so much of a heavy favorite that's going to win. There's heavy favorites on this card. I don't know if this is the top one because there's some pretty good horses in this field. Namely Charge It, who I think is sitting on a big race. I mean, if you look at this horse's career and you just put a line through that Derby effort, look at the horses he lost to. White Abario at that time, Florida Derby.
When the mile
probably the best
races,
he was ever. He was probably that was the best White Abario's ever been.
And the mile and 8th races, I think you can sort of scrap a little too, because I think once that mile he hits the mile, like you don't want to go much farther than that.
Right, he's a little shaky after that.
Yeah,
you can see that in the past performances. So I like the cutback. I think the mile suits this horse perfectly. And you see who he lost to in the last 2 races. Endorsed, who's razor sharp, and Proxy. And I think Proxy is probably just a better distance horse than Charge It is.
And Last Samurai and Stiletto Boy. I mean, you're talking about 3 outstanding horses in that division.
And he's not getting beat by slouches at all. And this race is not any easier, but he kind of sets up better in this race than he did in the previous ones.
I will say I have been a little disappointed in him in his last few races. With that being said, this is the spot for him right here in this race, cutting back at Belmont Park where he ran that freaky race. The way the race shapes up too is kind of intriguing to me because Matt, I saw you talking a little bit about this on social media that people were warming up to Slow Down Andy. Yeah. I am for sure going to use in a pick 4 and pick 5 the 3, just in case that horse gets out front, Dr. Chevelle, because I don't know for sure who's going to be on the lead except for him. Like and then right behind him, it's probably Charge It, like pressing him, and probably Slow Down Andy. But if Charge It sits that trip where he's like sitting 2nd or 3rd, just behind, cutting back a little bit, at the track he loves, at the race that they were probably really pointing for all year, right? For him going the mile at Belmont, that had to be the race that they circled and maybe worked backwards from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the race that Todd Pletcher talked about early in the season. I mean, before, right after that first optional claimer 62 when he had, net mile was one of the first words out of Todd Pletcher's mouth. This is where we're going. This is the goal for this horse. Now, it's hit a few speed bumps along the way, but I do think the fact this is the horse getting blinkers for the second time and going the right distance in this regard, going that one turn mile, I think is going to be key. I also feel like this is a horse that, you notice he's gone off as the favorite the last 4 times. And some people would say maybe he's burned a little bit of money the last 2 in particular. But this feels like the type of race where some people start moving off of him, and he then comes through and runs that kind of Dwyer-esque performance that we saw last year that was so awe-inspiring that day when he won by 23 lengths. So I think Charge It is a horse that makes a ton of sense in this spot. And Dr. Chevelle, I really like that horse a lot. I was a fan of this horse last year. Now, can he get the distance? I don't know.
Not sure. He stretched it to 7 before, and that was when he was 2 in the Del Mar Futurity. That was pushing it. The only other time we've seen him go 7, can't really use the race as a gauge because it was in the Malibu, and then that was followed by a long layoff. Like, he just didn't fire that day. I don't think that
and it was against Flightline, and you just kind of tossed all those races. But but I know to your point, I know he's going to be in the lead, and I know that's the way that's going to go.
And just people, if they leave him alone a little bit and think he can't get the distance, he's certainly classy enough to where he can beat this type of group of horses. I just don't know if he could do it at the mile, right? He could do it at 6 or 7 probably. Could he do it at a mile under the right circumstance? You'll probably get rewarded for him, at a nice price in your late pick 4s and pick 5s.
This is what I'll say about this. I'm sorry. In races this tough, you have to kind of split hairs to kind of make decisions.
Absolutely.
The only thing that I had a knock on this horse wasn't even the horse, it was the rider. I don't enjoy.
You've mentioned this before.
Betting Irad on the lead. He just fumbles the bag, man, every time. It's crazy. And for a guy that wins a lot of races, I mean, of course he's going to win some just because, he's a passenger and he's on the best horse all the time. But in a race like this where there's a lot of good quality horses and you got to ride your race and kind of get your horse to do what you need it to do. And I'm not sure he can do that here.
When it's a different set of skills. It's like in any sport that we watch, right? Barry, we're watching the NBA finals right now. We just saw, like, in the conference finals, a really good player like Jaylen Brown. He can't dribble the ball.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's a fantastic player. He's like a max player and one of the 20, 25 best players in the league, but he still can't dribble the ball. And once they figured that out, it got in his head. He couldn't put the ball. He was turning it over all the time. You can be really good and still have strengths and weaknesses. You're not just blanket great at everything. And I think watching riders have to make that decision between, do I go and put the pedal to the metal or do I grab a hold and sit? That's one thing for me as someone who watches. It's one of the more frustrating things to watch when you're backing a horse, when they're caught in between, when they don't know if they're going to go all in or are they going to sit, what are they going to do? And with this type of horse, I think, Matt, it's just like, I don't think there should even be two.
It should be a question. He's got to go.
No, you've got to go. And I don't know if, but there's going to be enough coming behind him that I think there's concern that he might not be able to get there. Listen, the other horse we should mention is Repo Rocks. I mean, it's kind of the elephant in the room a little bit, but listen, Jamie Ness has got this horse firing and running like Flightline. So, I mean, listen, it is what it is. If you look at this horse's past performances, his found a new gear.
Was so good last time out.
That was so good.
Sitting right behind the fastest pace. He showed more speed than he's almost ever shown. And it just kept going.
He kept going. I mean, and he can sit the right type of pace too. I mean, he can sit the same trip Charge It does. That's the thing. And listen, I think he'd be foolish to leave Repo Rocks off. I mean, maybe you say, well, he kind of doesn't always back up his best performances with another great performance. And he's been a little kind of, on off, but man, I mean, that last time out was really impressive at a mile. And so, he's one I'll absolutely be including on my horizontals for sure.
I may
Because
or
I
may
think he'll
not,
be foolish. Yeah.
depending on the price. But I do know I am fading Zandon. This horse runs the same race every time and loses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
just
this
feels
is
like
the new Midnight Bourbon, right? I mean,
and
just
yeah,
finishes second and third. I mean,
Yep. That's
very
exactly it.
little improvement kind of from year to year, right? Like
Oh.
it seems like the horses that are at the top of the division all just improve more rapidly than he does each year. And he's always like at the bottom of the best in the group, like he's just, and with his running style, that's one of the reasons why, because other horses can just work out better trips than him all the time. And even like that last race, the way it was
he didn't
setting
run
up,
bad, but it was
like,
Repa Rocks just kept.
That's the thing. And the way it was setting up, you're looking at it going, "Oh, this is Zandon's race.
Zandon's
like,
all day.
Look at how
right.
fast they're going. He's going to come running." And he didn't there. As we talk about how there may not be that much early speed in this race too. Would it even set up all that well for him on top of like just us feeling a little lukewarm on him overall? So they'll have to beat Cody's Wish.
And
really
the one thing
cool.
I'll say very quickly is when you're talking about the odds, there has rarely been a horse that has combined talent with a human interest story quite the way Cody's Wish does.
Absolutely.
This horse is going to take so much money.
Amounts of money.
Yeah.
And this horse, as a result, if you're like us and you think you can beat Cody's Wish, you're going to get a price, even on Repo Rocks, because everybody's going to float up because Cody's Wish is going to be 4 to 5 and nowhere close to 7 to 5, I think.
A feel-good story, the horse to beat in the Met Mile as we move along to race number 11 on Belmont Stakes Saturday. It is the Grade 1 Manhattan, 1.25 miles on the turf course in here. I'll start this one out. There's a horse who I kind of came back to after watching the trips a little bit, and that's the number 5, Soldier Rising, who I wanted to pull up his race and show as we talk a little bit about him. So you can look at Soldier Rising's form last year. He's a 5-year-old. But last year, he started getting in really good form. He was right behind Channel Maker. Then he was right behind Gouffo and Warlike Goddess. And then in the Red Smith, I think we can just put a line through that race. That was his final start of the year. He's been off since then. So he shows back up on May the 13th. It's his first start in 6 months. He's the number 6 in this race. And I think a lot of people will watch this race, and what will stand out to them is the trouble that Warren Point had. Legitimate trouble. He missed the break. Then he had to make a big early move. But let's watch Soldier Rising, the 6, also in here. And then again, if we look at his overall form and we just toss the Red Smith race, this horse has form that is good enough to win this race. He absolutely can compete with the best in here. So this is where things get a little tricky for him. He's caught in between horses. And you see he kind of has to back up. And at one point, look where he is now. He's going to actually end up last when he gets shuffled back. He gets stuck in a really bad spot as the race starts to develop around him. And he ends up running second and runs really, really well in that race, even after that was his first start back. So for me, watching the 6, now this is where things start to get a little tricky for him. We can go a little farther. He's going to start getting shuffled in between horses right here when it stops in front of him. And all of a sudden, he's 8th in this field of 8th when he was sitting in a much better spot. And now he's just in some serious trouble as far as having to pass a bunch of horses that are in front of him. So Soldier Rising, we can go a little farther, and he's back at the back of the pack. Now he gets some space and he angles to the outside and he runs really well. He only finishes behind Red Knight, who got the jump on him and beat him by a few lengths. And he's out here finishing strong in his first start as a 5-year-old too. It's a horse who's only raced 16 times. He's a 5-year-old. It's not like he might even have a little bit of upside here, making his second start back. So I like him in this spot. Matt, you've talked about Ortiz on the turf course over there. I think the pattern for this horse fits sort of nicely. Give me a little love for Soldier Rising. He's one that's going to be in the mix for me. But wow, how about the Appleby runners too, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly the Charlie Appleby runners are always formidable, and they are. But what I'll say is, I think this year we're starting to see they're beatable.
Yep.
And, maybe he's not bringing over the best that he used to bring over in the past. I mean, I don't think, Andy Serling brought this point up before. I mean, this is not Althea. I mean, this is not, that level of horse necessarily that he's bringing over. Warren Point, Jesus, Frankie Dettori got his money's worth riding that horse. I mean, that horse just looks like a head case to run. And that was you're right. It was a troubled trip. Absolutely. The horse seems to be working out great for Appleby now here in the States. It is notable. He gets the number 2 jockey though, right? Number 1 jockey goes to the stablemate right next door, Ottoman Fleet, with William Buick aboard. And usually when Charlie Appleby brings over William Buick, they mean business here in the United States. And that's usually an indicator of how much Appleby has confidence in a horse and how much, Buick has confidence in a horse that they come over and run together for there. So Ottoman Fleet certainly is, something, a horse to consider. But I'll be honest, in this one, I really went to Up to the Mark. I went to the 8, the favorite. I just think
Chalky,
this horse, Chalky and Weasel. And I don't know. This horse won for fun last time out and just dominated a field and just looked really good doing it. And this horse has done nothing wrong. Like I said, this horse, I think Irad gave this horse a miscalculated ride 2 back. I think the ride this horse got last time out was perfect. I think if they replicate this, he goes. I like a horse like Soldier Rising quite a bit. I'm using that horse in my verticals because I like some of the newer faces on this circuit, him being one of them. But for me, Up to the Mark was my top pick. But Sniper, I know you are allergic to chalk. So where are you going in this one?
Totally fading Up to the Mark. I just think that horse topped out last time, ran probably the best race he could under the circumstances. I don't think he can pair it up. He might run well, but I just don't think he's going to win. Honestly, I don't think there's all that much speed in here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got Ocean Atlantique that has shown speed in the past. You have the 2-horse Strong Quality who's been showing speed lately. So high, I just think ends up on the lead by accident in those races, and that horse is not very good. 50-1 shot,
right?
Probably a non-factor. So that leads me to a horse that I'm really interested in because of the trip, which I do a lot. Anybody that watches us on Friday mornings understands this. So Rock Emperor looks really interesting to me in this spot. This horse tends to run well for Flavian Pratt for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the last time I bet this horse was a win July 31st, 2022. It was the old Irad didn't give a good ride. Well, this is the Chuck thing, and I actually adopted it. Irad off. He went to, he didn't really give that horse a great run in the Manhattan at Belmont. Then they go to Saratoga in the Bowling Green, and Flavian puts probably the best ride this horse has ever had.
Yep.
And I think this horse is just I think this horse is gonna be a lot more forwardly placed, like that
3rd or 4th
Bowling Green back in 2022, and sitting right behind the speed and gets first run. Whether he wins or not is another story, but this horse, I don't know if you've watched any of his races, but he gets a lead. He's hard to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He kind of finishes things off when he gets to the front, provided he gets to the front. But this is just definitely a really, really tough race because you have these 2 horses, the Appleby horses. It's like, what do you do with either one of them?
I know. They're very tough to get.
You kind of want to, obviously Ottoman Fleet runs a big number, has been running big numbers over there. He's kind of hard to kind of go against, but the pace dynamic can be the equalizing factor here.
Yep.
And if it isn't that slow, I like Rock Emperor's chances, or maybe even one of the like a horse like Ocean Atlantique could.
See, I might throw the deuce in on 1 or 2, just pick 4 or pick 5 in case with some of the other horses I like, because you know what? You start looking at his overall form. He just missed it. He just missed at 1.25 miles on the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Just missed. And he's never run a bad race. on either surface in his whole life. And his 2 races on the grass were both good. And with him being inside and with Drew just getting aggressive, I think he might be one that I at least want to have in some of the tickets that I build around the horses I really like. So yeah,
but will Flo get aggressive? I mean, that's the $64,000 question.
I think so. I mean,
I've seen Flo choke out some fractions.
This is one that I have bad luck with.
He's more likely to have a horse run off on him than he is to
That's
hold
true.
one
That's
back.
a good point, actually.
So, I would be okay. I'm okay with him on speed horses.
Strong quality, a possibility here as we finish up with the Manhattan and we move to the Belmont. Now, for a lot of the very rightful discussion about the Preakness, only having a couple Derby horses back, not the strongest race in the world. And that may come into play, with the horse like National Treasure, who won the Preakness. How strong was the field that he beat? We do have probably the 3 horses that have been thought about as like the best 3-year-olds for the last couple months leading into the Derby, showing up in the Belmont with Forte, with Angel of Empire, and with Tapit Trice, who all were at the very top of the division. So at least with those 3 Matt showing up, it's a pretty good group, right off the bat. I mean, even just looking at the way that David had to make the morning line, the odds, the Preakness winner is actually your 4th choice in here.
Yeah, it's a very good Belmont field. One of the better Belmont fields, I think, in recent memory, that you have, like you said, maybe the top 3 in the crop that I think a lot of us think of in terms of Forte, Tapit Trice, Angel of Empire. National Treasure hasn't really done anything wrong in his career and just came off winning the biggest race of his career in the Belmont. You have a horse like Hit Show, who also hasn't ever really done anything wrong in his career and runs well up in New York. You have a horse like Arcangelo, who seems to be maybe peaking at the right time and has a pedigree to suggest that this horse should be able to get the distance. You have a horse like Tapit Shoes on the inside, who's kind of an intriguing horse. And then Red Route 1, who everybody has been pegging as a Belmont horse ever since they see him make those late charges. So there's a lot in this race, and it's really compelling. For me, I was on this horse in the Derby, and I'm not going to get off this horse now, and that's Angel of Empire. That's been my play. Pennsylvania bred, I am too. And so this is one that I'm going to stick with. I just think, again, this horse has never really run a bad race and ever done anything wrong and has only kept getting faster. I like the addition of blinkers. The horse is used to working out with blinkers, so I'm not as worried about how's the horse going to react to the new equipment sort of a thing. The horse has worked with blinkers well into its past. Getting blinkers on in the race should be a little bit more forwardly placed. And I just think Angel of Empire sits the right type of trip. And I like this one out of those 3 heavy favorites. This is the one that I like the most because I think there's too many question marks around Forte. And I just don't know if I can trust Tapit Trice because I honestly, I don't know who Tapit Trice has really beaten, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, beat anybody.
And that's the issue. Yeah.
Go ahead, Barry.
I looked at this race a lot, and obviously I didn't make any final decisions, but there isn't much of speed in here.
No.
And just not much speed. And it all kind of, to me, depends on what Tapit Shoes is going to do.
Yeah.
If that horse wants to go with National Treasure, that would be excellent. that would be perfect.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
But we can't say that's going to happen for sure. Usually we can kind of tell. This one I'm like 50-50 on. But I do enjoy the fact that the one is trained by the horse that by the same trainer as the one that I like, which is Hit Show.
Yeah.
I think Hit Show really ran a really bang up race in the Derby.
He did. His Derby race was good. And I don't want to
made him. He was in the 1 hole, made the move, got in front of Mage, was basically in the spot, and just couldn't finish it off. He had to navigate and do all kinds of stuff.
I think he was a little too close too, because they were pretty quick. They were going.
He was kind of forced though because of the inside draw. I mean, I know people say, "Oh, it's the gate. The new gate is okay." Blah blah blah. You're still going to run into trouble being on the 1 hole, and that's what he did, and he still managed 5th place, which is crazy.
He showed me a lot of just. I didn't think he was that sort of maneuverable of a horse.
Oh yeah,
right. That's what impressed me in watching his race back. How they were able to kind of just, hey, go here, go here. And he followed all the way, because when
Yeah,
you
he
draw
did.
the rail that day, you have to just be one with your rider. Like, you got to, whatever they ask you to do, you got to be in unison and in chorus with them. He really did feel like that. And
Yeah,
honestly,
Manny got him. Manny gave a great ride.
He did.
did.
And
Yep.
did everything he could under the circumstances to try to win that race, and he put him in the right position, just wasn't good enough.
Yep.
And that's fine going a mile and a quarter. Now a mile and a half, they're not going to have that sort of mad scramble into the first turn, or in that first run, and everybody will most likely get the position they want.
Mm-hmm. He can just
And I
settle
think
a
that,
lot better.
right. And that's why I say, it's crazy to me that Brad Cox and Chad Brown and Pletcher, they have a billion horses, but they never use rabbits. This is the perfect opportunity for Tapit Shoes to be a rabbit.
Yeah.
Because it's what's
Because
best for him too.
Right. Because Hit Show, trained by the same trainer, and Angel of Empire, who
Yep.
is a dead closer. That horse has to come from way back. That's the only reason that horse got beat in the Derby, because he was just too far back early.
Yeah, exactly right. And
so, you gotta have to gravitate towards one of those two horses, Hit Show or Angel of Empire. But obviously, I'm going to take the longest price.
So the thing about a Hit Show, his withers was really good.
Yeah.
And at that point of the year, it was one of the best races. Like, when he won at that point, all of a sudden he was like a live horse. But then he shows back up in the wood.
Right.
He misses the prep in between too, because there was the March. He didn't run in the Gotham in March,
which is probably for the best. Honestly, that race was a disaster.
So he shows back up after the time off. We've kind of forgot a little bit about him. He doesn't run badly, but because he got beat by a big long shot, we felt a lot different about that race.
He
because
just got a nose. It was only a nose.
I didn't give him any shot that day from post 12. I didn't think he had a shot. And the fact he ran as big as he did that day showed me something. And he runs his race. I mean, that's the thing about it. He is, like you guys said, super maneuverable. He will give you an honest effort every single time out. So I like him. Yeah.
And let me say this. He should have won the Wood, but he did have some reasons, like where you're looking back after going, man, he got bumped around a bit at the beginning, and then he was pushing off. There was a horse leaning on him that he was like having to push off to try to get out. Then he had the opportunity to win, and he didn't. But there were some circumstances earlier in the race that could have taken a little bit out of him. And if you're just talking about patterns, this horse has improved in every race he's run. Can he just improve like 2 or 3 more points on the buyer scale and just put him right there with everybody else? I like him a lot in here, Hit Show. And I didn't really like anybody in the Derby or Preakness that much. And a few days ago, I wouldn't have told you I was going to like Hit Show in the race, but just sort of seeing the past performances, seeing the way it all could shape out. I thought Barry did a really good job setting it up for you too. And I could hear that you hinted in your voice, Matt, that you also thought he could run a really big race in this spot.
Absolutely. He's in my verticals for sure. I mean, my top 3 are kind of going to probably be Angel, Hit Show, and then maybe a question mark in terms of who I go with third, but those are my top 2. And I have too many questions marks about Forte. Tapit Trice needs to be out in the clear, which going wide, to Barry's point, like going wide around Big Sandy is probably not the best
2
trip.
miles.
Just the hell with it. Just keep running.
Run 2 miles.
So, just keep going to the marathon. Just keep running to Queens. And so it's just going to be a tough trip, I think. And the other horse that I think is a wild card in all of this, not in terms of finishing anywhere near the board, is Il Miracolo.
Because this horse has to go. He's only in here to go. His 2 races that he won have been just straight speed.
That's the thing, is if you look at how this horse runs in all of his Derby preps, he runs mid-pack closer and does nothing. The 2 times this horse won, gate to wire, get out and go. And most notably at the last time, 1-turn mile. And if this horse has intent, then this is the horse that pushes National Treasure, and Tapit Shoes might actually be able to sit kind of tucked right behind those 2 going into the first turn and
or
be
there's
sitting
2
kind of
or 3
third.
all up there, and that makes it even better for Barry, like
exactly
Hit Show
for all of
Angel
us,
Empire.
for Hit Show, for
Yeah.
Angel of Empire, for these deep closers. Yeah.
I was debating with Chuck Simon on this point about Ir Miracolo.
Is he even fast enough?
Right.
Classy,
I say he
like
wasn't
classy
fast enough in those other races to get to the front.
Like fast class.
He
like
says they changed tactics. I don't know.
Like
I
if
mean,
he's
you
out
kinda
there
have
and it's
to-
him and National Treasure and they're close, you know what I mean? Is National Treasure going to win that battle and get in front of him? And is he just going to sort of get discouraged and pack it in? That's a good question. It really is.
I mean, honestly, you look at this horse buyer numbers and they're terrible comparison to the rest of the field. And when he wins, it's only like in the 70s.
Right.
So he may not be fast enough to get in front of a horse like
even if
National
he wants
Treasure.
to, right? Like,
right. Even if he wanted to, he
in
might
Italian,
not be fast
running
enough.
on Friday, huh? Try to get in front of her. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, go ahead. Who can? You can't. You know what I mean? Like, try.
Right.
So
he says it's a change of tactics. So from the maiden win in the Remsen, the Mucho Macho Man, Holy Bull, Fountain of Youth, Florida Derby, he was like, "Oh, they changed tactics," and I was like, "I don't know. You know, it's debatable, I guess." I don't think he was fast enough to get the lead against any of those horses in any of those races.
With those horses overall.
Right. So I mean, you know, obviously they're not going to be trying to quarter horse to the front, but this horse might be the one that does that.
Yep.
And gets the lead by accident because nobody else is really wanting to go too fast early.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just makes some decisions for horses like National Treasure, who I don't think is very good when he gets headed.
No.
And
no,
if he
can
goes,
be behind one horse at most, but he can't be that far back.
No,
exactly.
Right.
So Johnny V is going to have to want to get to the lead.
He's going to want to be like sitting just off another horse and not even behind him.
I don't know if he can do that.
I don't like you're right, because he doesn't, and you're right. I don't think he can do it well. He may have to if Il Miraculo goes and just want to get to the outside of him instead of being behind and have to move around and just.
I mean, honestly, in the Preakness, when Blazing Sevens came up, he wanted to quit. He wanted to quit. And the only reason Blazing Sevens didn't win is because Irad wanted to herd over. If he would have kept that horse straight,
just run straight, he wins.
If he kept that horse straight, he wins. And you know that's why I say, you know, National Treasure kind of puts a little weird spin to this race, and what's going to happen, because if he gets loose on the lead, he's going to be tough.
Absolutely.
But if somebody heads him, he's
done. Yep.
Yeah. And that's sort of I saw David Aragona, who makes the morning line odds for New York, was talking about this with Nick Tamero, who also makes morning lines different places, and he had said one of the things that had been hard for him when he was making the morning lines in the last couple of years is when there looks like there's lone speed or like that lone speed horse on paper, he always thinks they're going to get more money than they did. And so this year he set National Treasure, I think, a little higher, that, you know, he put him as the fourth choice, because he said like We the People and other horses like that didn't take some of the money that he had been expecting in years past. Yeah. And it'll be interesting.
Yeah, because people were betting Rich Strike.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Betting Rich Strike. But here, people, I mean, so this is going to be fascinating. I think David did the right thing in terms of Forte being the top choice, because New Yorkers,
home team,
and I say this affectionately as a Pennsylvanian and as an Italian American, we cannot wait to throw our money away betting on a Micropoli horse up in New York. I mean, the Italians are going to be lined up around the frickin' street, throwing money at Forte for Rapole, for Pletcher, for Irad. I mean, that is as New York a combination as you're going to get, and they're gonna throw their money on it. And meanwhile, a horse like Angel of Empire, I don't think has the cachet that other people do. I think that's why I think out of the big three, he's going to float up maybe a little bit, and you get a decent price on a horse that I think is really, really talented.
Forte or Fort wins the popularity contest and will get bet for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
That is,
and then the Baffert horse. Hopefully, he won't take that much money, but we'll see.
I mean, I hope he does.
I mean, I mean, if he's too low, you know, you got to have a limit there as you know, the price on National Treasure, because he's kind of shaky given the pace scenario and the dynamics. It could go in his favor, but how likely is that? You know, that's really what you got to evaluate.
Right.
The owner of Il Miracolo, when he was asked at the draw, you know, why did you decide to run in here? So I'm a gambler. I love to gamble. So
That's the best. That's the best.
yeah, that was great.
I'm rooting for him now.
Hey, you know what? He's honest, and I appreciate that. That's what we all are. That's why we're here sitting down, the three of us. That's why I'm sure all of you are watching this or listening to it on the podcast because you love to gamble. And this is one of those great weekends for all of us who love to play the races. We went through the daily racing form past performances. I encourage all of you, if you're looking for some help, head on over to drf.com and check out everything they have. They'll have clocker reports for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They'll have betting strategies for Saturday if you need any help with any of that stuff. So all the resources you need to succeed at drf.com. Barry Spears, we got Going in Circles Big Monday. We're going to follow you on social media. What else do you want to plug, or what else do you want to mention coming up?
Well, we usually do the Friday.
Yeah.
But we're not this week, but catch us every Friday.
Yep.
And then Going in Circles every Monday. And then I'll pop up here now and there, everywhere on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever. You might see me.
Big weekend. Maddie, Trust the Profits, capping the card, win, play, show. What do we got?
Yeah, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, all of it. If you follow me on Twitter at the @LatFail to Menace, you'll get all my content. So yeah, Monday do a weekly, a little bit like Going in Circles, but maybe a little bit more abbreviated, like a Cliff Notes version of Going in Circles. Our
shit's like War and Peace, bro.
Yeah, I know it is. I know. I'm like 32 minutes. You guys are like 3.5 hours, and I love it. And so do that every Mondays, and then capping the card. We'll be doing race 1 through 13 for the Belmont. Just me running solo, but David Aragona did join me to preview the late pick 5 sequence here in this stretch of races. So that was really nice for David to join as well. And then we just got a slew of stuff. So just follow me on Twitter, and you'll see it.
By the time you listen to this and watch it, we will have already done the fantasy draft for the Belmont.
I wasn't even going to bring it up.
So if you want to go over to Matt's social media, you can check that out. It's a lot of fun too, because everybody sort of understands just how to draft, what a draft is. And so we all kind of try to pick our teams. We're going to draft between horses that are in the Belmont and the Acorn, and it worked out perfectly for me because I was able to pick your brains before the draft. Now I know a little bit more about who you like.
Listen,
very much.
Anybody looks at whoever I draft, they're probably going to get scratched.
I was going to say, if you're following Barry, then you may want to wait to put your wagers in. No future wagers or anything like that.
Both times, man. Both times.
We got to keep our fingers crossed because this year we've had so many scratches from the Derby and even afterwards moving forward. So fingers crossed. Let's hope that does not happen again this week because it's a really cool Saturday coming up. Thanks so much to Matt and to Barry for hanging out. I always get emotional at the end of these convos with these guys, but man, the last couple of years, 2 of my absolute best friends in the world, not even in the world of horse racing, just overall, guys I talk to more than almost anyone, and so consistent, so trustworthy. That's what I love about the both of you guys, is that you are always there consistently. 1 week here or there, we'll have to miss stuff, but everybody always shows up ready to rock and roll. And
we pick winners.
We pick winners. And what I like
baby.
is there's a dynamic that we have where sometimes we'll joke with each other, but I think it's a very inviting show in that we don't rip on each other for horses. Like if we think maybe a little bit differently. And I was going to say, it's like we see that in some places where people do that, and I think it makes people uncomfortable sometimes to even want to go outside the box or throw something downfield. I'm never going to take a swing at one of you guys when you're talking about a big 20-1 shot. And sometimes other places people will, that horse has no chance. Oh my God. I think it as a gambler and as a handicapper, it makes you less confident to want to look for those prices again. Yeah. So I really appreciate how with the both of you, because I know there's some weeks that I get crazy with the Cheese Whiz. Where, I'm talking about horses where we're some people are looking at me like, what the hell was this guy
smoking? Know for a fact.
Whatever it was.
Sideways.
Right? Whatever that guy was on.
And then it wins and they're like, okay.
But more than anything, it's just what I think we all want to teach everyone overall is the method and the approach. Just try to get the best value you can always. I think that's the one thing, win or lose, you'll always take from a show that Barry's on or that I'm on or that Matt's on. Try to best value that you can, make the most money out of it that you possibly can. and good luck all weekend. We'll see you again real soon for a lot